Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. So in this video we are going to take on the Extreme Superclass, the Extreme Super Battle Road stage for Super Strength versus Extreme Physical. So in this video, basically as per all my other ESBR guides, which are a bit different to my first attempt at this stage, we don't use any summonable LRs for ourselves. We don't, we try and fit as many free-to-play cards into the team as possible, and we really try to push on from there and just kind of see how the entire team goes, how the build works, and yeah, just give some people ideas about how little we can use in terms of DFEs and things like that. So as our lead here, we have the God Vegeta. He is a 100% strength lead with 3 key. He's alright as a lead. Obviously with 100% we're going to be a little bit low on stats, but with this team build we're pretty tanky. Essentially this team is going to be all tank and just kind of let the Vegeta do all the damage. It's basically the entire team build. Krillin is a free-to-play card. He has 50% guard. He has 50% damage reduction when he guards attacks, and because it is a typing stage, he is always guarding attacks, which makes him pretty good defensively, especially after he supers. It raises his defense for 1 turn. Pan has a 50% chance for 55% damage reduction, which will also be pretty good. Obviously she also heals 33% of her damage dealt, which creates a little bit of healing there. She also has her attack buff. Goten is going to be floating and creating rainbow orbs. He stacks defense on a super attack and has some decent base stats, being an easy A unit. We're going to pair up the Vegeta with one of the best tanks in the game in a short event format. The SS3 Vegeta, he has 90% damage reduction and also has 180% attack damage when he is attacking a stunned enemy. Obviously he has a chance to stun on his super, which is going to allow us to control the fight. And then we're going to have the Gohan and Videl floating and dealing some good damage, good damage for this ESBR stage, and just lowering the attack and defense of the opposition in general. They also gain a whole bunch of buffs, some additional attack and defense, and some additional crit chance against extreme class enemies. So they're a little bit better off in this stage due to the fact that we're always facing extreme class enemies. Obviously though, they are going to be one of our weaker units, so we're going to keep them off rotation and just kind of floating around, but they'll do a decent amount of damage, and with attack lowering we should be able to control the amount of damage that they take. Obviously with the lineup being so tanky, the one thing that we do want to obviously kind of be aware of is that the event's going to take a little bit longer than most ESBR will. Especially with this kind of team build. Like, we have plenty tankiness, but we only really have one good offensive unit in the shape of Vegeta. So yeah, if Vegeta doesn't get things going, then yeah, we're pretty much down and out in terms of damage. So we are going to be a little bit cautious, because obviously with these fights, if we get a fight that has multiple enemies, we would like ideally to get our Dokkan attack then. If not, we should still be able to win, I believe, but yeah, it would definitely help us to get the Dokkan attack when we're facing multiple enemies, because without many damage dealers, it's just going to take a lot of turns to cycle through and get Vegeta to basically finish off each and every single member of a 5 enemy situation. But Vegeta and Vegeta will be a decent pairing. Vegeta will be a little bit better. The God Vegeta will be a little bit better when he faces movie bosses enemies, because obviously he then has a chance to stun from his passive, which will increase his survivability, especially if we are fighting 1 or 2 enemies. He'll basically act as a second stun, so that's very good. But beyond that, not too much that we're going to worry about here. I think the weak points at this current point in time is the Videl and Pan. And probably, just the fact that we're running at such a low lead of 100% due to the strength Vegeta, that is a problem. Obviously it affects all our stats across the board. It affects our damage, which is, a big portion of everything. It affects the amount of damage we take. But unfortunately I don't have the SS4 Goku. If you have the SS4 Goku, you could run probably this exact same thing, but you could just drop the God Vegeta, and then probably just link up whoever links up okay with the SS3 Vegeta, and then probably just push on from there. The SS God Vegeta is decent, but he really is only there for his leader skill. I think there are plenty other super strength units that are much better than him. But in terms of super strength, I mean, there's plenty of ways you could build it. You could build a Vegeta's family. You have the counter Vegeta and Bulma unit. You have obviously the SS4 unit. You have, this God Vegeta. You have the SS3 Vegeta. So a Vegeta's family team would be really solid. Under the SS4 lead, you could also include Pan. Otherwise, if you've got the SS4 Goku, there's plenty of good strength units. There's Namek Goku. There's SS4 Goku himself. There's obviously the Vegeta who can link with all of them. There's God Vegeta. There's plenty good super strength units. We don't have Videl out on Global yet, but she is another unit that's really, really solid. The Time Travelers unit is pretty good, but they do require Time Travelers units to be on their team, so that is one thing that you're going to have to keep factoring in. There is obviously the Goku. There's a couple good strength Gokus. There is the SS2 strength Gohan EZA, who's a decent offensive unit. Overall there's more than enough options, I think, to run a super strength team. It just depends on how you put them all together, really. That's going to be like your main point of view. Obviously UI Goku as a super strength unit is very, very good, bringing his evasion and everything into play. Plenty units. There's also the SSB Kaioken Goku. There's obviously the 50% support. There's Kefla. There's Kale. So there are plenty of good strength units. You could run Kale with the free-to-play strength Caulifla, I guess, to activate Kale's guard against all types. Although it's not necessary because you are already guarding. So Kale just needs to stack defense, really, which he'll do after multiple supers. So yeah, there's definitely, you can definitely build a different kind of variant of team. There's the Gogeta as well, who's very, very solid. The SS Gogeta, that's got his EZA. He's not as good as the Int one, but he still hits really hard. He attack lowers. So yeah, there's plenty of options. There's the Majin Buu, Angel Goku, and Angel Vegeta who turn into SS Vegeta. So yeah, plenty of options to make a team. In terms of this stage, we are just trying to focus down Frieza and leave ourselves with King Cold, who we're trying to get the stun on to just mitigate damage. And then once we've taken out Frieza, we'll just try to stun lock King Cold, and we'll take it from there. Obviously, one thing you do want to be somewhat careful of in terms of the Mono ESBR and Mono SBR is obviously there are 4 fights. So generally you want to try and get your Dokkan attack either at the beginning of stage 3 or the beginning of stage 4. You don't want to kind of waste the Dokkan attack at the end of stage 3, which is, not a waste, but yeah, it's not going to do as much effect or help you out as much as a Dokkan attack at the beginning of round 4 or round 3 would. And then also, you just want to also be careful about item usage. You have 8 items, so it works out to like 2 items per stage, but ideally you want to kind of maybe use 1 item on a stage, and then like keep 3 for the last one. It's not always that the last stage is the hardest, but it's usually you either entering into it in a bad situation, or your rotations get messed up, or something always goes wrong. So you generally just want to try and keep as many items as possible to close out the fight, because things can just get a little bit dicey at stages, and we don't want to be kept in an uncomfortable situation due to the fact that we didn't keep as many items as we needed to, or anything like that, really. So otherwise Vegeta's active skill obviously comes in handy quite a lot here. We're going to get Vegeta to kind of pop that one off, and then we'll just have to activate Pan's skill and then get some super attacks, and then hopefully start whittling away at King Cold here. Once we get the stuns off, we will have a lot of a much better time with him than we would with any other unit. So yeah, definitely a good situation that we're in currently. And Pan getting the stun obviously is very helpful as always. Thank you very much, Pan. Very helpful there from the little bee girl. Yeah, so now that we only have King Cold to face, we can hopefully get him down and then move on to the next stage. Obviously we're doing alright here. The one thing we are going to obviously get is we're going to hopefully not get the Dokkan attack here, but it seems like it's going to be unavoidable unless we manage to get like the stun with Vegeta, or like, well, a double super attack with Vegeta, like that crits or something. Nah. So I think unfortunately we're going to get the Dokkan attack. We would need a crit from this Vegeta and from Goten, which we're just not getting. So yeah, unfortunately it looks like we're just going to fall short of being able to avoid the Dokkan attack. Obviously that's a little bit disappointing, because we ideally would have liked the Dokkan attack to open up the third round, which would have dramatically shortened how long this stage would have taken, especially if we'd had this Vegeta up in that turn. We probably would have like 2-turned the third round, which would have been pretty good. But I mean, yeah, sometimes we can't control these things, so we're just gonna have to deal with it and kind of do the best we can. But Vegeta will finish off King Cold here, and then we'll move on to the next round, and then we're over halfway through the Esbr at this stage. Obviously, as you guys can see, the Esbr is managing to take its sweet time, basically. But because of the tankiness of the team, we do generally have a decent amount of control in most of these fights. This fight will be a little bit more difficult for us, because obviously there are 5 enemies, but luckily the God Vegeta does have his stunning ability from his passive, due to the fact that we are facing movie bosses at this point with Turles and everything. So, in terms of difficulty for this stage, I mean, in terms of this team, I mean, you could definitely make a much better super strength team to take on the stage. But it is kind of one of those things whereby, with a lot of these teams, when you're trying to run as many free-to-play units, or you're trying not to use summonable LRs, or even some of the bigger super strength type cards, like I avoided using Kefla, I avoided using Namek Goku, I avoided using, the Easy Gogeta. Sometimes the main thing that you do struggle with is you do just struggle for damage. And the reason is usually free-to-play cards, as good as they are sometimes with their passives, a lot of them are utility based, a lot of them fill in slots and gaps, but they don't act as main rotation cards. Their stats are low, so their attack stats are just generally not as high. Like, high stats affects attack a lot more than a lot of other stats, and I think that's just because of how many multipliers are applied to attack, with key multipliers, SA multipliers, then obviously the normal leader skill multipliers, etc, etc. Whereas things like defense only kind of go through 2 multiplier phases: the leader skill, the passive, and then obviously the support. So it is a combination of all of that. But also just, when you're building these teams, sometimes, especially the leader skill, like I've said, we've obviously got the 3 key 100% strength leader skill. And sometimes the leader skills can really just hold you back. Usually when you don't have a good alternative, or you don't have the 120% lead or anything like that, you can start to really suffer in terms of stats. And leader skills are one of the most important things to base stats, and they're just going to affect your whole team the whole way through. An extra 30% from the leader skill, or 20% from the leader skill, wouldn't make the biggest world of difference, but it would shear off a solid 3-4 minutes of your run. So it is one of those things you just do have to work around, or do as the best you can. As always, we also try to stick as many units as we can under 170% lead. So whenever we're taking the summonable LR, or we're taking a a friend lead that we're going to use that's kind of going to dominate the stage, like in this situation with SS4 Vegeta. We really want to try and focus or aim on bringing a card that has units that we have that fit under the larger skill component of that card. We could just bring all super strength cards for sure, but by bringing some Vegeta family cards, we also enable the ability to activate them under that 170% leader skill. So it is one of those things that you do when building a team. Just need to bear in mind. Sometimes you're limited on options. Sometimes you can't have everything rainbow. Sometimes you don't even have the right leader skill. So you really have to just work as best you can around your team build and just see from there. But so far we're doing an okay job. We've managed to stun Turles. We've now only got his 2 buddies and him left. We should be able to take out his tiny little friend there, the purple guy at the back, hopefully this turn. And then we'll be able to focus in on Turles eventually. But once you've managed to take out a couple of the units, or you keep stun locking the main unit, generally in these 5 unit fights, you'll have 4 units that aren't as strong as the main unit. And then you'll obviously have the main unit that either fires more super attacks or has more health or has more defense than most of the other units. So yeah, generally what you want to do is either you go straight for the main unit. In some situations you try and burst down the Turles, for example, as quickly as possible. I like to, depending on my team makeup, I generally like to control lock the main unit. I always find it more reliable to either stun or seal them, and then quickly clear out a lot of the other units. That removes my chance to get super attacked, which obviously reduces my overall chance of failure quite dramatically. I do notice that generally most of the units have a chance to super attack, which obviously is a bit of a problem, because by them super attacking you obviously end up taking a lot of damage. Especially when you get hit by 2 or 3 of them in a turn. It can be really devastating to an SBR run, to all of a sudden go from using an item and being max health to the wrong unit getting 3 or 4 supered, and then all of a sudden you're back down to 10% of your health, and you've already popped an item and you probably already need to pop another. So it is one of those things that obviously we do need to factor in. But yeah, otherwise everything's going okay. We're struggling a little bit with this portion of the stage, but that is just generally because, like I say, this team struggles offensively. Vegeta's really our only source of offensive damage, so when we struggle with that, we're just going to struggle with the stage in general. But yeah, we're managing to get through the stages here. Obviously, the tankiness does have its perks, and having Pan's heal is great. This team, I think definitely this team could be improved, of course, but I think this team will only get, this free-to-play option team will only get better over time. I think this, obviously Vidal's coming out, she's going to be a strength lead, so for her, she definitely could be a great lead for this team. I think Pan's Easy A will help. I think when this god Vegeta gets an Easy A, which I think will happen within the next 6 months, I just have a hunch. I think that's going to help out the stage a lot. Yeah, I think in general, Grandpa Gohan and Pan will also get an Easy A along with Pan. So that's a good solid option that you can run possibly. So I think there's definitely some more to come on the free-to-play scope in terms of team building. So yeah, definitely a super solid team build. Just more on the tanky side. We're the immovable rock versus the immovable rock. That's probably the best way to describe this team build at this stage, and we're just going to be slightly more immovable than the other rock. But here what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on stunning up Boo, because Boo definitely attacks way more than Babidi. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on stunning up Boo, and then we are going to kind of take out Babidi as quickly as possible. And then once we can do that, we'll have quite a good amount of control of the fight. Obviously, it does rely a little bit on stunning, and we are going to be a little bit swamped for damage here. So we are going to need to, get a little bit of RNG on our side. But that's always what it's like with these stunning teams. Sometimes you can get really crap runs where the stuns just don't rock up. And then other times you can get really good runs where the stun is just going off every single time you're attacking. And it can really just change your run. Like one of those is the Super Saiyan 3 Esbr. When SS3 Vegeta gets a stun off, it's all of a sudden way easier. It feels smooth, it feels crisp, it feels like it's not even a challenge. And then all of a sudden you do a run where he literally never gets the stun off. And it almost can feel like overwhelming. It can feel like still a ridiculously hard stage. So it's one of those things where you just kind of, I don't want to say you're held hostage by RNG, but it's definitely something you're going to feel a little bit more in these kind of stages than you are in other stages. At the end of the day, DBZ Dokkan is still, to some degree, an RNG-based combat system. Things are percentage-based, they're chance-based. The way orbs fall is by design, but the orbs you start with is based, on a metric within the game. So sometimes you will just have those runs where all of a sudden everything's going smoothly and you'll wonder why it took you so long. I had that with Realm of the Gods. Realm of the Gods ESBR, I either finish in 12 minutes or I flop after spending 10 minutes on the first round. It's just one of those things where the difficulty of the stage can just be dependent, and the more RNG units you have featuring in your team, the more you're going to feel this. The more you have lower stun units or units that have a chance to proc something from their passive, the more you're going to feel this sense of RNG kick in, and that's just because of the way your team build works. So overall, I think definitely when you're building your team, when you're building your super strength team, just keep that in mind. That the units you've seen here, obviously they're under a lower lead skill, but yeah, sometimes you're going to need a little bit of luck here. Even if you're using a full strength team, you're still probably going to need a little bit of luck, because SS3 Vegeta will feature on the stage a lot, and Pan, and both of them are still chances to stun. There's only really one or two major ceiling units on the strength side, on the super strength side, so it's definitely something you want to be aware of. Even if you're using a unit like Strength Gotenks, he is still a chance to stun, and you'll feel the chances to stun, you'll feel the stunning mechanic quite heavily, especially if you're fighting one or two enemies. If you're fighting two enemies, it is just quite difficult for you, because getting the stun obviously mitigates half of their potential damage in a turn. So when you don't get that stun, you can immediately feel a very hard difference between the two characters. Of course, obviously that means that getting the stun in the 5-man fight is technically less valuable, but especially if you're stunning the leader, who's generally more or not attacking a lot more than the other units, you can still mitigate yourself quite a substantial amount of damage. But yeah, so we've now only got the Majin Buu unit to face here. So obviously we're going to attack boost, try and get Pan, well, not Pan, but we're going to try and get Vegeta as many orbs as possible, so that we can dish out as much damage as possible. Obviously we use the active skill of Pan before we use the active skill of Vegeta, and we get a crit there, so obviously very good so far. Then we'll shift Vegeta into the first slot because we have some items activated, and that will allow him to get as many red orbs as possible, and then we should be on our way good to go. We might even get a second Dokkan attack here, which obviously would be great, but also kind of shows how long we've taken to finish this ESBR. So yeah, definitely one of the longer runs in an ESBR, probably one of the longer runs I've done in a while in any event really. Even the Shadow Dragons and that, yes, it was probably the same length of time, but it's very different. It's very different running a long form event to running the multiple fights of SBR, constantly using items. The longer form events, generally you end up with set rotations where you kind of just let the units do their own thing, and then eventually, those units will be fine. When you're running these events, it's a little bit different because, these events, like, you have to switch units sometimes, you have to move units in and out, you have to pop items, when there's not an item active. You can't just kind of autopilot it, or at least as much as other events, I would say. So yeah, definitely one of the more challenging in terms of durability. But I think, everything will be fine now. We should kill him off here with God Vegeta. If we don't, we'll be incredibly unlucky because, might take a bit of damage afterwards. But no, I believe we will be fine. So yeah, that's going to be it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know how you're going with your ESBR challenges. But until then, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers and bye.